Hello, everyone. Very nice to see you. I forgot the clicker, I guess. This one. Okay. So my name is Yevhenii Pyltiai. Right now, I lead the team, the product team at Adobe Commerce. Previously, I was principal product manager for Adobe, working on Commerce Cloud solution, and also I worked with a pretty big growth engineering team. So the topic I want to talk today about, it's in between technology and business. And basically, I wanted to cover how technology teams can actually impact revenue in very positive ways. So we'll talk about how we can unlock the revenue potential for your company, your merchants, your customers. But to actually do that, we first need to understand how conversion funnel works. And there are a lot of things that can impact it, really. So this is a very simplified view of it, where you have the top of the funnel, and then you have the product discovery, and then you have actual checkout and other experiences on your website that finally convert the user, the customer who's coming to your website, into actually paying customer. So if you look at those three stages, customers come into your website, it can actually drop off at any of those stages. And depending, where they come from, which advertisements they come from, which channels they come from, this will look very differently. And essentially, the outcome of optimizations you could make can be very different. So let's talk about top of the funnel first. The question it answers is basically, can customers find our products? Essentially, that's your product marketing teams, it's advertisement, it's branding, sales outreach, even cold calls sometimes. And that's how customers find about your brand, find about your products, and that's how they come to your website. By the most part, business teams like marketing and sales are the ones continuously optimizing that part of the funnel, but then it actually gets to your website, right? So here comes product discovery. And essentially, can products meet customer expectations? And I don't mean are the products good or bad? It's more about they came to the product page, can they understand that it's the product they're looking for? Let's assume you are selling light bulbs, like smart light bulbs. And customer comes in and they want to buy the outdoors one, but your product page says nothing about it. And it doesn't actually tell if it's indoors or outdoors altogether. So customer comes in, they keep wondering, and then basically not finding the answer, they just leave. Final one is checkout. How many customers have you lost on the checkout, right? It can be due to many reasons, starting from some very simple technical problems, just unexpected errors, something didn't work, or more business reasons where essentially customer comes in, they want to use buy now, pay later, it's not there, they leave. Essentially, teams can optimize any of these steps, and we'll talk a little more about how to actually find out what to optimize, why, and what are the steps. So your end goal is essentially to improve revenue and impact the unit economics in a very positive way. Internally at Bold, we call it Power Trio, where essentially you have conversion, average order value, and LTV. Those three will be basically impacted anytime you change one of the three. So you cannot really improve conversion by a lot by giving out discounts without impacting AOV and decreasing that. You cannot, improve conversion when you are increasing prices either, right? So every time you change one of the three, essentially all three will move, and you just need to find the perfect set where you will get the best results. And then you compare it to the customer acquisition cost. That's exactly the price of getting one customer for your business. That's where marketing teams, sales teams, they will put money into advertisements, they will put money into brand development, some calls, partners, summits, etc., to actually get your customers to come to you. And at the end, what needs to happen is your LTV needs to be higher than the customer acquisition cost. And commonly you would think, why, technology teams should care about it at all, right? It's pretty much like marketing and sales stuff. But because you actually own 2 out of those 3 funnel steps that we just discussed, you can actually improve it much more than you would think. So the statement I want to say is technical teams can improve Power Trio, reduce customer acquisition cost, and Magento can help here. So Magento is one of the biggest platforms on the market, one of the oldest one as well. If you think about any problem that you might have today, probably somebody already solved it before. And even better, you don't even need to customize a lot. You can basically take an extension of the marketplace or buy it from the vendor, install it, and go forward with it. And it essentially will solve some of the problems you never thought about before. But that's how technical teams can essentially go and invest some time to actually improve one of those 3 metrics or decrease the acquisition cost. Let's talk about optimizing the technology stack. Sometimes when you start looking at those complex scenarios where you need to actually improve some parts of the funnel, you sometimes need to start from the basics first. And, over my years with Magento Cloud, we were trying to actually make it much easier. But, it applies to open source merchants as well, and pretty much everyone using Magento. So first thing is basically deploy your Magento right. Meaning, production mode, static assets pre-built, all media files optimized, no 50 megabyte images that load for 15 seconds, right? All those kind of things that make experience for the end user, the shopper, bad. Once you fix that, basically the next step is not to just go in and start fixing your checkout, because checkout might not be the problem. And to understand what exactly to fix, first you need to actually get the numbers. And that's the hardest part. Most of the merchants we've interacted over the years with, they have no numbers whatsoever. The best, it might be Google Analytics that goes through we got some customers, we converted some customers, and conversion rate is 20%. But that's not it. What you need to have is basically step-by-step conversion funnel where you get customers from your top of the funnel, you go through each single step, and even checkout is 5 different steps inside. And once you get to that point of granularity, that's where you start actually understanding what's wrong with the website and why customers are not converting. Final one, but also very important one, and that's probably the one that technical teams can solve first, is basically error tracking and handling. So how many times have you seen that order is not placed just because validation didn't work? Or, you click something, payment didn't go through. And there is no explanation, no exception handling, nothing. Basically, the customer on the end gets well, sorry, your payment didn't go through, please call support. Out of two customers might call support, the other one just won't. And essentially, you get to a point where, you should be handling those errors, you should be tracking them, and even if you handle them and you have them in logs, sometimes you just don't look there. Who looks at logs every day, right? Unless you essentially get some alerts for it. So to show you an example, what might actually happen if you don't do that, we'll go to the next slide, and that's a very clear example of what can happen. You had conversion in 50%, 10% rates, and essentially, you do a change, and you have good intentions, you just want to improve address validation. And you install an extension from the marketplace that is supposed to basically reduce instances of you shipping order to some address that is not valid, right? Because you want your orders to come to your customer. What happens is, in this situation, commonly, if you don't have proper tracking, your conversion might go down, and you start wondering, why is that? Why did my conversion go down? I did the right thing, I added the validation. It totally makes sense. It's, very logical. Customers should be happy. Google API is basically entering my addresses now. What's going wrong? And apparently there is a setting somewhere in the admin that says accept or don't accept PO boxes as address. And your business, by the nature of your business, you are sending a lot of stuff to PO boxes to businesses. You don't have tracking, you don't have login. Basically, you get numbers going down. The only thing you can do is really revert it back and investigate. But if you do have tracking and you actually look at errors and you have step-by-step conversion drop-off, what you would see in this situation is checkout step number 1, where you enter addresses. That specific step went down, and you have like a much higher drop-off on that specific step, which would lead you to start investigating what did I do with that step, right? And you start looking at like latest release, which you tagged already with a date, alongside all other data, and it says we released new address validation. And at that point, you're like, okay, it's address validation is a culprit, like what's going on with address validation? And you start looking at errors, and it's saying PO box is not accepted, which basically gives you a clear idea of like, well, I changed address validation on that date. From there, my conversion went down because of the reason of PO box is not accepted. Meaning you have a very clear path to actually go fix it, which essentially you would do pretty quickly, probably overnight, like 1-2 days, and it's done. Imagine you didn't have the numbers, and you didn't have the errors, and you didn't have any of that technical stack behind it. You would be wondering for weeks at best, or somebody seeing metrics going down will basically come and say like, hey, revert it immediately. We cannot continue losing money here. So just say one of the examples. There are so many more where this can happen. You install some new extension with like payments, and you install some new extension with like shipping rates, and some fees added, and basically those don't work together well, and we're getting to the same situation. Let's talk a little bit about our marketing spend. How technical teams can actually help the company to reduce marketing spend. So when you're looking at the revenue and profitability and just good profitability rates, you can improve things in 2 ways. You can either make customer acquisition costs cheaper, or you can actually generate more revenue from those customers. And we're back to the funnel, right? So top of the funnel, marketing team optimizes here, and essentially they can make it cheaper, but there is always a limit. So, if you are selling again light bulbs, there is a limit of customers who are searching that in Google, and there is a limit of customers whom like Meta or Instagram or whoever can identify as that group of customers who are like specifically interested in it. At that point, once you hit that limit, what will happen is Google will say, well, looks like you are doing well, let's broaden the audience. And here you start thinking like, sounds like a good idea. I have a good conversion rate, let's just pump more traffic. And you do that. What you see on the outcome, probably that your conversion rates start going down, and you start wondering like, I didn't do anything with my website, what's going on? But here's like your customers who are essentially not so interested in the specific product you are selling, start coming in, and they just don't find what they need, and your overall conversion rate starts going down, and you won't just identify exactly what changed, right? At that point, marketing might start optimizing basically the strategies, spend less, spend more, optimize the keywords, but the whole idea problem might be not even there. Customer might still be looking for the same light bulb. The problem is your navigation or landing page is not there. It's not working exactly as expected. There is no category called exterior light bulbs, and they might be not able to find it. And your search, well, sometimes indexes fail, right? And you need to re-index it, and none of the search works too. So that's where technical teams can actually make it much more stable, overall ensuring that none of it happens, and customers can come in and find the right things. That's where there are a lot of extensions and other implementations of how to improve navigation, filters, all the swatches, similar things. And a lot of that actually needs to make sense and need to be experimented on, because I've seen instances where we sell light bulbs for exterior, we send traffic to it, but then there is a swatch that says well, there is another light bulb, and you select that thing and it will give you interior one. So I end up basically on the product that I never even searched for, and I drop off because I cannot find what I need. So at the point where customer acquisition cost becomes too expensive, it might be actually more viable and cheaper to invest into the technology instead of trying to pump more traffic and convert it at lower conversion rates. So how technical teams can help? If you look for inspiration and ideas, basically based on each funnel step that we just discussed, you have dozens of different options what you can do. And, specifically for agencies, like if you ever have a team who's idling right now because there are no projects and they are just waiting for their next project, the service you can come up with is something like we're optimizing your commerce, and we basically like look at your data, we put analytics in, and we start essentially improving the outcomes of the customer's business. And it can go pretty far, because as soon as you start generating revenue for the customer, for the merchant, like they get good ROI on it, and it can become like a continuous service that you continuously working on, because, like money in, money out, it's the same thing. Let's talk about different options here, right? So top of the funnel, like marketing teams, sales teams, they would care the most first about being able to see and measure everything before actually changing anything. So they want to be able to see how their investments are doing, and that's the first problem to solve there. If you are done with that, next thing is to implement better landing pages, basically the first door through which customers enter to your website. Then comes technical SEO, marketing signups, promotions, site personalization, or all the advanced things. But then, there is an option of sending customers not to your landing page, but directly to the product page. At that point, you probably don't care as much about top of the funnel. You want to do the product discovery better. Here, there are like lots of options too. Product catalog, pages, search, recommendations, upsell, cross-sell, and basically everything you can imagine between the point when customers actually come through the marketing to your website and before they go to checkout. And finally, checkout probably is one of the more important things to optimize, because at that point you have a very high intent customer. They actually made an effort to find everything, click a few buttons, get through the cart, get to the checkout, to only find out that, something is not there. So customers whom you save on this step will probably give you like the best ROI, because essentially, they're high intent customers. If they find the options they're looking for, they don't meet any kind of technical difficulties. Essentially, they are the easiest one to save and convert them into actual paying customers and convert paying customers into actual revenue. Let's look at the two examples. Let's say you are advertising on Google. You do search ads, right? You have two options here. One option is you send customers to the exact product page on the website, which is going to be much more expensive because it's much more narrow search. And essentially that costs more money. So every time you are doing, like I'm selling exterior light bulbs that work with that protocol of smart home, etc., and you send them to exact page of that product, there will be much more competition and many more brands or, like wholesale competing for that search. And there is a very limited amount of like search queries that will actually fit that. So you will run out of it pretty quickly. And then once you get to the broad search, that's where you need to have your other technical things implemented, because at that point, homepage, category page, search, all the things we talked about start to matter more. You cannot convert customers coming for a specific product anymore. You need the rest of the website to come together and actually start delivering. So here, you can actually get really good results if you keep optimizing. You get like broad search, high volume, low cost, but your website investments become much higher, because at this point, you get people who don't exactly know what they want yet from your website. They come in searching for a bulb, and you need to sell them exactly the ones they look for, as they need to be so seamlessly find it. So let's talk about some technical pain points. Magento's biggest strength and weakness is the same, pretty much. It's unlimited customization capabilities, as we all know. It's not new, right? But at the same time, we all know that extensions are mostly tested in isolation. So unless they're coming from the same vendor who developed like 50 of them and they tested them together, you would have different vendors delivering different ones. And it's very common where, let's say we're adding some fee to checkout, and then our payment method doesn't work with it because it doesn't recognize that specific parameter. Core is not tested against thousands of extensions. I think that's pretty obvious too, right? Magento or Adobe team, they don't install every single extension we as a community develop. and they don't really test against all of them, even individually, but moreover, they don't test for them like combined. So every installation for every single customer is unique, meaning, you will get edge cases, you will get very different outcomes from each specific installation. And every store has unique customizations, so we're building unique experiences. That's why we're here with Magento, and not do like some simpler platforms, right? We're customizing the experience to customers' needs. And finally, occasional backwards incompatible changes. That happens too, especially now that we don't have like that many minor releases. Sometimes security things happen, right? And we need to fix something that basically comes in and breaks a bunch of stuff. To finalize this thought, I wanted to say that, we're in an era right now where releasing like big releases is not as good anymore, because you always have an option to run very small iterative changes and actually optimize them and like A/B test and measure, and every change, it doesn't always actually need to stay in production. So at the time when I worked with like growth engineering team, I had 20 engineers on my team. And 90% of the code we developed, it actually never got to a permanent state in production, which was a very hard thing for engineers to work with, because like they were like, well, we did all this cool work and like we ran the experiment and the hypothesis wasn't right, so we rolled it back. Over time though, especially after like first 3-digit, like 300% improvement on one very important metric, everyone started to immediately get super excited because they hit like the jackpot. We basically printed quite a bit of money for the company. But the idea is, you need to test stuff. So it's not like we can basically assume that adding address validation solves everything, right? What we need to do is we define the hypothesis, we define the problem, we implement the solution, 100% we measure the impact. And ideally, we define what that measurement will be before we actually even launch it. Because, if we're starting to think about it, how do we define success at a point when it's already running in production, that's too late. And final one, the most painful one, is to decide if it actually is to be staying there or it's to be gone. From there, you just repeat the cycle, continuously iterating through your conversion funnel. Final thought, which is not very obvious, but individual funnel step improvements are multiplicative, meaning don't get too fixated on one part of like funnel. Don't like spend all the time on, let's say, product pages, because you will probably squeeze some improvements like first try, second try, third try, but there are diminishing returns. By the time you're doing like experiment number 20, you'll probably have like half of the experiments failing and another half just giving you like very, very minor improvements. What you should do instead, once you improved one of your conversion funnel steps significantly, you just switch over to the other thing. Because if you improve 2 steps by 20%, at the end you get 44% improvement of overall conversion. With that said, technical teams can actually make a difference in business metrics. And it's not only about building what e-commerce managers or like product managers define for you, right? Even just by doing very technical tasks and actually improving like error logging, analytics, tracking, all those kind of things, you can make a really big impact. With that said, thank you. And let's get to questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Yevhenii. Before we move forward, do we have any questions on the topic? Okay, I actually do. In your experience, meaning on based on the customer experience and the merchants you're working with, where does the usually or most common the problem lie? Meaning across along this funnel, where does it usually happen? Is it not is the issue with marketing metrics, or not enough conversions, or not enough analytics, or is it with the stack? Is it with the checkout, or maybe something is not the site is not optimized? What is the percentage of issues?
So I think it's always a mix, to be honest. There is no simple answer. Is it like, marketing not doing well, or is it like technology not doing well? It's always in the middle. Because as we looked at it, right, like if marketing is sending the traffic we cannot convert, doesn't really mean like they're doing a bad job. Probably we're just not built for that specific traffic. On the other hand, they can be sending like a really good targeted traffic to us, but we still don't convert for whatever reason. The most things we've seen are commonly coming from very basic things, as I mentioned, like very simple error tracking. My favorite, like even since Magento times, like when I joined in 2017, until now, it's like 2015 now, 2025, right? We still see things like rounding didn't work by 1 cent, and then you send it to PSP, and PSP is like, nope, it's a different number than platform says, so we won't accept this payment, reject it. Even very simple things like that, they are very important to track. And the biggest mistake we've seen to date is basically nobody just watching it. As soon as you start watching it, like the answer become very clear, like where to focus.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, thank you once again. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.